Black Push Talk, and we have a special guest visitor with us today. I call him the Honorable. I mean, even though he may not, he may not stick to it, but the Honorable Dr. Bill Williams from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Cobb County. How are you doing today, Mr. Williams?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing fine, and I appreciate the gratuity of referring to me as honorable. All you've done is set an aspiration for me to earn it and sustain it.
No, but the one thing I find interesting about you is that we met a couple of months ago. I think at the meeting that the Cobb, DA Brody was hosting or something, I think, of Cobb County.
Yes, yes.
And we met there, and you're one of the people. There's very few people in life I can say that like I've come across that I could just kind of sit under the umbrella and just kind of listen to them talk all day. But you're one of those people because I love the fact of what you know and what you've done. What you've done. And as you know, Black Push is a nonprofit organization. We deal with social injustice, voter suppression, and ex-offender rehabilitation. And we've been doing a lot of work on social injustice, but not just in here in Cobb County, but we've been doing it throughout the state. But you have been working tirelessly throughout Cobb County for how many years now?
Since 2005.
2005.
Yes.
And has there been a lot of, I can assume there's been a lot of change in Cobb County since that time.
Well, I think that's a fair assessment, Sean. But being very clear, we still got a lot to do.
Right.
Okay, especially as we talk about some of the social justice issues, and also influencing a transformation in our criminal legal system. Okay, so yeah, we've made progress. Okay, I'm pleased to say that, but I'm also quick to say that uh, where we are is no time to take time out. We still got work to do.
You know, it's funny because we had a show like right after George Floyd, that Derek Chauvin was convicted, and our message to people was basically like, hey, let's not lose sight of this, right? Let's not get caught up in the fact that hey, we got justice today, and make us think that that's justice forever, right? Um, what are some of the things that you think that we are as a community we're missing?
First of all, one of the things that we're missing is clarity in language.
Right.
With all due respect, the outcome of the George Floyd tragedy was not an indication of justice, but it was an indication of exacting accountability. Okay? Justice would have shown itself if, in fact, justice had appeared at the front end
Right.
of that interaction. Okay? So, helping people to be very clear on where we are in this journey and buying into the language that clearly and accurately describes it. I say that because of a couple of things in my own journey that we neglected to be clear on, if you would. The conflation or confusion of desegregation as being integration. I have never seen an integrated institution in my life. Now, I've seen a whole lot of race mixing, desegregation, if you follow me.
Right. I do.
Okay. So grabbing that as being the input, the endpoint, okay, and running with it and telling it as if you were there confuses people.
Right. I hear you.
Okay. So accountability is now becoming increasingly so in our dealings with law enforcement.
Yeah, you say that recently we actually just did like this segment, and I will not discuss what we talked about in it, but we got together a group of judges and someone from Cobb County, and where we just had like a private conversation. There was nobody, like it was on Zoom, but nobody could see it. It wasn't recorded, and it was a real direct dialogue. And it was interesting to me how different each judge kind of seen the bench, or mostly, there was cliques of them here, but how most of them they all of them had like a difference of opinion of what their role is on the bench. One of the things that I find interesting is that the other week somebody asked me who's the most powerful person in the courtroom, and I was naturally I said it's the judge, right? It's the judge. The judge makes all the choices, right? And it was a judge that told me no, the most powerful person in the courtroom is the DA's office.
Yes, sir.
And that speaks a lot to what we as people think about justice. Because when we see justice, we see it coming down from the judge and it flows down from the judge. I mean, of course, we know policies are passed, but then it flows from the judge in the courtroom.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the case.
Yeah, if I could just get in front of the judge and tell my story.
Right.
You got me? Oh, that's what I need to do. No, the DA is the arbiter. The arbiter between law enforcement and the judge. The DA has the responsibility of looking at what comes to him, okay, and sorting out what is real and what is not, okay? And in the absence of that, you have a flow through of such things as bad charges, overcharges. Sean Smith has been arrested, and in the same instance, he has 3 counts of obstruction of justice. One is he perhaps raised a question with the law enforcement officer. Another one was not resisting, but questioning why he's got to put his hands behind his back to be cuffed. Okay. Third one may be his pushing back on being put in the police car. Those are 3 counts of obstruction of justice. Ooh, 3 counts. So someone has got to look at that,
right,
and say, wait a minute. Okay. Okay. And that's why that midpoint, or what I call the arbiter, has got to be someone who is transformative, especially if you are Black.
Right.
That's a burden. Now some people, no. That's a burden, because any one of us who rise to position, be it as being captain of a corporation, okay, or a public entity who is Black, needs to know going in, an early assignment for me is to find a way to decontaminate this place of structural racism.
Right. And it's important because we have been involved recently in a lot of different cases where we've seen that DA's office just has become, some DA offices have become what I call paper pushers. Like you said, they're the mediator, right? Police officers get them charges. They just take the charges and they run with them, right? And whatever's in the statement of the police officer is factual, because police officers are sworn, officers of the court. And when we do that, that's how there was a case recently of a guy, I think he's in Kentucky or he's in another state up north. And literally everybody has literally said that he is not guilty of the charge he's sitting in prison for right now. And the judge has yet, the governor has yet to release him from prison.
Yeah, and see, that's what we call judicial denial, prosecutorial denial. The jury has spoken. I don't want to hear any new evidence.
Right.
You got me? Or the jury has spoken. It is closed. We have a good system, but it's not perfect.
Right.
And those who sit in positions of authority and have power, I think, are obligated to always be open to new information.
Right.
And treat it as such as they engage in review, okay, towards possibly sustaining, or guess what, overruling a bad decision.
Yeah. I mean, we have, when I think about this, when I hear about Cobb County, anytime I talk about Cobb County, the first thing everybody always talks about is what Cobb County used to be, how bad it used to be. And one of the things I told somebody the other day, I was like, well, they're not that far away from where they used to be. I mean, from perspectives, I know attorneys who don't even want to defend cases in Cobb County because they feel like the system is so rigged. And that's with having a new DA in the system. That's with having 2 new judges on the Superior Court. That's with Judge Murphy hiring new people from Magistrate Court. And people still say, no, Cobb County on certain cases, it's not the place to be.
And what I hasten to add, Sean, is if there is a captain on a large cruise ship tries to slam on the brakes and quickly turn it around, that ship will capsize.
Right.
Good intent, but poor judgment.
Right.
What we're dealing with now has been compounded over years. And it is it requires someone who's insightful enough and committed enough to use transaction after transaction to end up with transformation. Because the real change is a result of changing the organizational culture. Okay? And that is time intensive.
Right.
So, I've been at this long enough to know that, and to also be able to look at the transactions to see how they are moving towards transformation. Some people in that culture will say, I no longer want to be a part of this, and they will leave. Okay. Others will, in fact, adapt and rally around the new change. But you've got to constantly now feed them by way of examples as well as policies and procedures that this is the new order of business. As superintendent of schools, I used to say to my staff, as we were in this argument that's recycled now called critical race theory, but called the infusion of Black history into the curriculum. At the startup, I am not concerned with your attitude. At 9 o'clock in the morning, when I visit that school and visit your classroom, I want to see Black history being taught. So I'm not even talking about the quality of it, because my view is that if I can get you into behavior, I think that I've done enough research and exercise judgment that, you know something, you're going to find the endpoint, or what do you call that, or very acceptable, and you will be able to embrace it. But if I'm spending all the time trying to get your attitude right, and we're not into the work, then, that's a steeper hill, okay? So getting folk into a different behavior early on is extremely important, as we begin now to look at structural changes.
Yeah. And that's one thing I tell people all the time. Like, we have to remember that most of these people have only been in office, 6 or 7 months now? It takes time. It takes time. But we have to, like you say, watch the transactions. That's what we're watching for.
Yeah. It takes time for them to actually complete the process. But most elected officials are very proud in their first 100-day report.
Yeah.
Well, that has now become institutionalized.
Right.
If you get elected now and you don't come out with a 100-day report, people say,
what have you done?
What have you done? So that's taken years. But now, if in early reports like that, you are not reporting out work that you have started that you promised us that you would attend to, then I become suspect.
Right.
That you now settling into a degree of comfort with the current situation.
And this is the thing too that's interesting, is that I remember I was having a discussion with somebody, and I'm not going to point out where they come from or which county they're part of, but I said to the person that when the person first got in office, like, I was watching them, and I was like, oh, they're doing a little bit too much, right? They're making promises they're not going to be able to keep. sooner or later the office is going to humble them.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that's what the case is, right? That the whole weight of the office will come to reality of what you can and you cannot do. And also, to the reality of how much you can change within a certain amount of time. Most of these people only get 4 years to make those changes. Mm-hmm. But you hit on something that was very important that has been in the news a lot, CRT, critical race theory, or teaching, infusing African-American history within our education system.
Yeah. May I caption it differently?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because I think that's a part of the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Critical race theory, first of all, is based out of legal training. Professor Derek Bell used to be up at Harvard, went to Oregon as dean, a luminary in the field of law. Okay. Stimulated putting that concept together as a way of training future lawyers to have a proper context when they were putting together their cases. Okay. Another way, Sean, it does confront conventional thinking where it's done with race. Okay? Lions, when they tell the story, and they are telling it now, of who is king of the jungle, it's not going to be Tarzan. Because they are writing based upon their own research and reading. And if you've built a whole social order with privileges and everything based upon the lie that Tarzan is king of the jungle, it is very difficult for you now to be receptive to new information that debunks that and dismantles that whole system. Enter critical race theory. Most of the people out here who are pining on it, reacting to it, politicizing it, simply have grabbed a hold of it for its emotional vitality, the same way they did racism.
You know, it's interesting because I think it was Howard University just announced that they were going to eliminate a certain part of their history out of their education, and I think it was Cornel West wrote a scathing article, basically saying like it's not our obligation as educators to pick and choose what we educate people on. It's our obligation to give them basically the information and for them to figure out what's right and what's wrong, right? Yeah. And we see so many schools, whether the black schools who are trying to eliminate history of the Confederacy, right? Or the white schools, or whatever the case may be, or white counties who try to eliminate the whole fact of we don't need to talk about racism because it's a bad part of our history. Why is it that people want to tend to just shy away from the reality of who we are?
Well, and that's because, for example, I've become aware of one of the reasons why so many folk are just now beginning to find out about the tragedy of Black Wall Street.
Oh yeah, crazy.
Okay. Incredible piece of American history, but also late to really reach the level that it is now in terms of awareness is because of the complicity of silence by victims and perpetrators. We don't want to talk about that. Okay? So many times victims of issues receive them as being so horrible that even they will not tell the stories and have bought into, if we just keep quiet, then everything will be okay. Okay? Same thing with our history. I know a number of older folk who just would not talk about the tragedies that resulted from slavery. It's too painful. Okay, so for reasons that I understand, although I don't accept them, but I understand them. Being complicit, and guess what? Sanitizing by not keeping alive real parts of our history. Okay, so I think that's a part of it. Okay, and I mean I don't agree with that solution. You follow me? Because I think that the power that we have is one elevating of the history that provides an accurate picture of our existence here in this country. So if you won't face it, you can't confront it.
Right.
And if you don't confront it, you can't change it.
Right. Then it just finds a way to look different, but it's still engraved in your society.
Like I said before, we're now dealing with critical race theory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a new package for those who benefit from our social and political structure, now emotionalizing it. Folk are talking about banning it. Once pinned up against the wall, can't even explain it. That's immaterial. I got the emotional piece of it. You follow me? So
Right.
let's get moving.
And one of the things that I find interesting is that, like I said, I love talking to you. We was talking earlier, and one of the things that people are forgetting is that homelessness is going to pop up, right? We're seeing a lot of that happen throughout the country, throughout the state, but we see a lot of it happen in Cobb County. We're seeing a lot of it happen throughout the whole state. I mean, we know that the governor just eliminated, basically kicked a whole bunch of people off on unemployment who, based upon his reasoning, was that they were just too lazy to get back out because of the benefits they were getting. And we've been doing work with a lot of labor unions recently where people, who wants to work for $7.25 an hour? How do you tell me how you survive off $7.25 an hour, Governor Kemp, and then we can have an actual discussion. So what are some of the issues, we've been talking about Cobb County, that you see as far as Cobb County homelessness? Because the memorandum has gone out.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is broad denial that it does exist. The other issue is, and I struggle with this, the descendants of former slaves who were subject to all kinds of discrimination about housing, okay, covenants,
right,
if you will, real estate deals, redlining, okay, who now, because of their predecessors who weighed in and won the struggle, where that if you can pay for it, you can choose anywhere that you live, have now joined the army opposing opportunities for affordable housing, okay, for others who may not be in the same class or income group they are.
right,
Okay. I see that as really being a real piece of the problem, as opposed to being thoughtful, being involved, helping, okay, with the new social power that they have in providing. They now are the first line of defense to oppose. I mean, first line of offense, opposing those same provisions
that
for
help,
others.
Yeah, that help to get them to where they're at today.
Got teachers who are sleeping in cars with their children. Okay, got other people staying in extended stays, or as Sean, paying as much as $1,000 a month, for that nice sized room where the kids and the parents can stay and cook using that microwave oven. Okay, may have fallen on bad times, as many of us experience, where their credit, went down. They might have defaulted on a loan or something like that. but can't climb out of that because they can't get back into housing that they can afford. Okay, $1,000 a month is more than many people pay for their mortgages.
Right.
You follow me?
I follow you.
So you've got this new advanced guard of folk who look like you and me, rather than being advocates for that. Okay, they are the first line of opposition. But I also say a large part of that behavior indicates to me how detached they are from our historical development
Right.
as a people. You got me?
So not even been aware of your history. You can't help prevent it from happening again. So that's, but I mean, because it's not only, like I said, not only in Cobb County, you're seeing it all around the state. I mean, I was coming back. I think I came back from out of town. I came back from D.C. a couple of weeks ago and getting off 285 on Veterans Memorial, and there was a whole group of homeless people over there with tents that were not there before I left, literally within a couple of days. And we're about to, I know that they're starting evictions up, and I remember last time I spoke to Sheriff Owens, he said one of the things that he was going to dread the most is when that day comes where he has to go send his sheriffs to knock on people's doors and tell them that they have to get their stuff and get out of somebody's house.
Gotcha.
But what can we do better?
Well,
Because I'm a Cobb County resident.
Yeah, and so am I. What we can do better is now look at ways in which we can, in fact, through working with community groups. I just left a meeting earlier today with a group where even though we're coming from different angles, but our common concern is sustainability in housing for working class people.
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, who pay $800,000 a month to occupy a room in extended stay. Okay, what we can do is look at a couple of entities that already exist here in Cobb. We need to operationalize to maximum extent the Cobb County Housing Authority,
Mm-hmm.
that has done a lot of deferring its responsibility to the Marietta Housing Authority. Okay, so those are two entities that have been running off of what I would call past history and conventional thinking. But we can't do that, and as I always say, unless we are informed to even get at the table to influence policy, what do you call that, operating procedures. Okay? So learning what is out there, learning what we need, acknowledging what we need to know in order to influence change, because I feel, in my opinion, although valuable, only takes you so far.
Right.
Because at some point, where are your data? You got me? Because policies ought to be a result of informed decision.
And that's one of the things that we've been really big on. You said a powerful word in that, policy. And a lot of things I was telling people recently, like a lot of things we're sitting up here getting upset about, some young men and young women getting killed by police officers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why police officers are able to walk away is not only because they have a sucky process of what we call a grand jury process. That doesn't even really mean anything, right? It's just the policies allow them to. Policies permit for them to. I mean, all officer really has to say is that, hey, I felt threatened.
Yeah.
And there's a policy in the book. And it's funny because I've been speaking to DAs recently, and one of the things that we've been talking about is that the grand jury process, right? You or I get indicted. There's nobody there but the prosecutor. They present to the grand jury. They keep pushing through cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? The only time a person is able to have representation in the room or to attend their grand jury is when a police officer's been indicted, when it's something that has to do with him being on duty,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So he can attend and he can speak up for himself,
Yeah.
okay? And DAs have said to me, like, that's something that even we don't agree with, right? But the only way we're going to change that is not going to be by just sitting around here being upset every single time a police officer kills a black or white
Mm-hmm.
woman or man, right? but it's every single it's changing policies and putting people in place who actually see the policies the way we see them.
And also having a mindset to move towards transformation.
Right.
Right here in our own county, recently, a lot of misunderstanding about the actions taken by our new DA.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been here since 2005. Under one, two, I think 3 prior DAs who have always used the route to prosecution. One is on that route, they control everything. Even the public access to information.
Right.
Okay. New DA came in and with a high profile case decided not to prosecute it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in doing that, knowing that the family, I'm not mentioning the case, just the situation.
Exactly. I know exactly.
Okay. Knowing that the family was all locked and loaded to take whatever action they needed to take, that particular approach did something that many of us were unaware of. One, unlike what would happen if that DA, because I want to be gender neutral, that DA would have happened as a result of prosecuting it, did not thereby making available the entire transcript of the proceedings. Every question that was asked, wasn't asked, every answer that was given, et cetera, et cetera. Where that particular attorney has at his disposal a verbatim copy of the proceedings, as opposed to going the other route.
But nobody would have known.
It's closed. See, that's what I'm talking. Thoughtful about being transformative. Okay? Seeing some transaction that at least gives you the impression that there's a different way of thinking about ensuring that justice will show up. 2, that certainly accountability is more predictable to be exacted.
No,
okay. So, I only point that out in terms of, and I said before, I've been working on this plantation since 2005. 3 different people sitting in that office. We have been concerned about the function of the jury system. Just now finding out this aspect of it. Okay. And is it perfect? I suspect not. But I'm the kind of person that I try to encourage others, load ourselves up with as much information as we can. So when we approach a situation, yes, I expect you to know. But I'm also going to do my own homework to fill in the gaps of what it is you convey to me that you don't know.
Right.
Even if you know it. Okay? So that's the other piece of that. And I call that functional interdependence, as opposed to folk like me and you and others being totally dependent on those that we, in fact, have appointed, elected or however they get to positions of what do you call that, power and influence.
Right. And you said something powerful earlier today. I had made this comment to somebody the other day. I said, just because it's a black face doesn't mean that it's a good face, right? And I said we could look at the Supreme Court of the United States and have a perfect example of what that means, right? And we have, I think we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, that for so long we have tamed ourselves to be like, okay, if it's a black person, then we have to support them, right? But what about when black person doesn't stand up for the values in which you stand up for? I mean, we have somebody running for governor right now, black or not, does not have my vote.
And so you got to be able to discern that because I've said the burden, if you will, and slash the privilege of being elected to high office is that if you are black, and you don't understand whatever the office is, that it is polluted prior to your arrival. It is polluted with structural racism.
Right.
That you have got to, one, identify and then clean out the pollution. Okay? Being oblivious to that, or you're not I'm saying going in, not getting in there and a year later, going in. That's got to be your point of view, and be in a space that says, I'm willing to be surprised if that's not the case.
Right.
There's too much history, too much information about institutions, be they private or public. I think that would support the assertion that it is polluted with, my words, structural racism. Practices and stuff that have just been going on because that's the way we've always done things. Okay? And even tiddling around with equality, which doesn't help us, because the real deal is equity.
Right.
You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
I find, Sean, more people now willing to talk to me about being equal, and they push back on equity. Being equal just keeps us running in the same space that we were before, and others running in the same space that they were for, which is usually ahead of us or we're behind them.
Right. And equity does this whole different thing. It gives
yeah. You see? And as they get as clicked on them, this equity thing, it is pushed to the fore, equality.
That's important. That's powerful, actually, that we're so focused on equality that we forget about equity. And equity is what is going to ultimately get us to equality.
Yeah, that is the solution. Now, do you have to move through equality to get there?
Absolutely.
But if equality is your end point, then you missed it.
Right.
You got it? You missed it.
Yeah, because we get comfortable. And like I said with the George Floyd thing, people think that, okay, we've got justice, that's it. But there's still so much more going on. But one of the things that I find interesting is that I think it was Al Sharpton who was talking the other day and on MSNBC, and he was saying that he just did a funeral for a young white man who had been killed by a police officer. And one of the things that people always assume, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, Black Push, that just because it's a black face and just because we stand at the forefront of black issues, I'm not going to, like you, I'm not going to shy away from that. Doesn't mean that means that we don't care about other issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for you, I know that's a lie. For me, I know that's a lie. Because I remember right after the Asian incident we have down in Atlanta, you were one of the first organizations that reached out to me and said, hey, we're going to be here so-and-so on this day protesting. Explain to people, too, who don't know, definitely for young people, about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, about what it is that you guys stand for, how it is that you guys got founded back in 1964, 1965.
Yeah, 1958 was the formalization of it, okay? It was incubated, I think, in 1957 after the Montgomery bus boycott. Probably still stands as the most effective, okay, coming together of black folk to demonstrate their power to affect change.
Right.
Okay, 300 north of 300 days that black folk, and see, I always ask young people to go back with me to that period of time where you're really talking about when you made those decisions, the risks were far higher than they are today.
Right.
You follow me? Lives were lost. What do you call it? Means of feeding your family were taken away from you.
Homes were taken away from you.
Home. So that was total commitment. That
Mhm.
was total commitment. But be that as it was, the folk came together and were successful in that kind of economic pressure being put on big industry in Montgomery, and that was transportation. Okay. We come out of that. We also come out of that with an understanding that the best, I guess, one of the better indications of success is flattery and repetition. As you hear young people, black people in particular, it is changing, wanting to diss one of the more effective ways to affect change, while others, be they women, white folk, folk who are evidencing other gender preferences, or what do you call that, sexual choices, okay, have adopted the basic mode, that is organizing and what? Public protest.
Right.
Okay? Organizing and public protest. Okay? So that is really a short history of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in terms of how it has done its work, resulting in over 200 pieces of public policy. The most, the ones that are referred to the most, the Civil Rights Act,
Right.
the Voting Rights Act. But we don't talk about fair housing. We don't talk about the Elementary Secondary Education Act. Okay? So when you look at what's come out of that, now we have squandered through inattention and negligence a lot of the gains. For example, we lost really the Voting Rights Act.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, because we fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Frederick Douglass is still alive and speaking loudly. Power concedes nothing without demand. It never has and never will. Okay? And I blame my generation because as our progeny reaped the benefits of our work, we celebrated with them. Oh, my daughter just got accepted into the University of Georgia. Okay, my son just got accepted into, and not realizing while we had shifted gears because of new opportunities, we also decimated historically black colleges.
Right.
Okay, I'm pleased to see that there's a resurgence of interest, okay, in that, but years and years of out-migration of not only of our precious investments, those are our kids, okay, that we now were moving away from historically black colleges to all now go to Michigan State and blah, 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 blah. Granted, some should. But do we need to withdraw all of the deposits that we made from the bank?
Right.
When we get ready to what? Begin to want something else to be added? Do we pull out everything? Leave some stuff in there. And I think that was a failing on our part that's now resulted into the gap in many of our young people not really being connected to the history that gets us to where we are now.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I was thinking about the other day is that we sometimes celebrate so much of the present that if we don't pass on what we had to go through in order to get to the present, then our kids don't like. In our heads, we think that okay, because we got the Voting Rights Act, right? My children don't have to never worry about dealing with this again. But we forget that legislation is tied to some of them is tied to people's views changing.
Ye-
As we
yes,
see
sir.
the Supreme Court is what struck it down,
Yeah,
right?
yes, sir.
I mean, views changing, and it'll change again in 20 more years from now,
Mhm.
right? So we could pass the George Floyd bill today, and 20 years from now, it could be a whole nother Supreme Court that views the George Floyd bill totally different than we do now. So social injustice is a constant work.
Right.
And that's what I think people forget. It's a constant work.
Absolutely, that we're on this journey in this great experiment called the United States of America,
Right.
which is an experiment, and we have been able to see the ups and downs. The good news is our young no longer have to rely upon our stories, because if they're paying attention,
Their own stories
they,
have been created.
their own stories, but they've got to remember that the stories just didn't start. The movie didn't start when they walked in.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and see, I think that's a big mistake. They have no historical reference, and yet they get involved and they think. And I'm not talking about all young people, because there are a number of insightful young folk who've made that connection.
Right.
You follow me? But so many others have not. And until we can reconnect that, so that it's all about continuity. Sankofa, so that what? We can be informed in terms of what's next.
Right. No, I definitely agree. And that's interesting because just the other day, I'm telling you, we was just having that whole discussion about how people have gotten so content. And when I was in DC, I actually went with, you familiar with Bishop Jackson from the ME Church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So we went up there because he has a whole group, Pastor Lee May, Pastor Jamal Bryant, and they were focused on the Voting Rights Act. We went up to DC to kind of pray and kind of be like, hey, we need help here. One of the things that's interesting is, again, we talk about, we have to understand that for an American project, that the power is not designed to be in the hands of one person. It's designed to be in the hands of people. Like people who are upset about Governor Kemp getting rid of labor or the unemployment benefits early. The way you do that is you have to put heat to the seat. We have to get out. We have to protest. One of the things that disappoints me a lot is that we don't see people out there protesting about these issues that they know are going to affect them until like it's too late.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And that's that kind of lethargy is a part of the habit of delayed involvement, because the pain, as I watch it and I'm tuned, is theoretical.
Right.
I can't count, Sean, the number of people who knock on SCLC's door around an issue because it's finally happened to them. And then it becomes real.
Right.
You follow me? All of a sudden it becomes real. And it has been hard to get them to display the empathy that, even though it hasn't happened to me,
it's happening to somebody.
It is happening to others of concern to us. That's the hard nail. And the more comfortable people think they are, the more difficult it is. Okay? So that's what I find to be challenging is folk will plow into our churches.
Mm-hmm.
You got me? Engage in tremendous amount of in-reach that they confuse with outreach. I'm not a scholar of the Bible, but there are a couple things that help to guide me. If you want to find Jesus, seek out where the least among us are. And see, that's always been in front of me. And I've tried to share that with my people who are passionate about their religion. Okay? Um, with respect to just that observation, how do you prove yourself? Okay? You are excited about doing missionary work out of this country, but 10 miles from you is similar kinds of conditions that you will board a plane, spend a month, 6 weeks helping out with. How do we do that?
Right.
If I may, that continues to puzzle me. Right in Cobb County, people sleeping under tents. Okay. Others are in housing conditions that filled with squalor. Okay. I'd mentioned to you, extended stay hotels are now being used as long-term housing for folk. Okay. And we just continue to go about our routines. Or if we do assemble, there is so much talk that points out how disparate our understandings are. With that kind of wide divide, how can you fashion something that says we're going to move forward? If you don't know, first thing is to turn yourself in and say, look, I'm willing to listen and learn.
Right.
Okay. And that's rarely the case.
And we've run out of time, but I think I got to go back and leave it at what you said. He said, if you want to find Jesus, go to where the least amongst us are. And that's a powerful statement in itself.
Yes, sir.
And when we just keep forgetting, one of the things that's extremely important is that we can't forget where we come from, because the moment we do, we'll lose a big part of who we are. We lose a big part of who we are. So thank you for coming today. And I recommend anybody who don't know more information about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, please go study it. It's an awesome organization. Dr. Ben Williams, you're awesome, and the things that you do in Cobb County are amazing. And we look forward to working with you guys even more than what we have done in the past.
And you can find me more often than not at a place called the Family Life Restoration Center. It is a place that has been in Mableton and serving Cobb for more than 15 years. Divinely inspired. That is my conclusion. Divinely inspired. And that operation has served 7,000 to 10,000 families a year. Food, clothing, okay, counseling, referrals to, other kinds of agencies. And Sean, I've threatened you before, and we got to follow up. I want to get you down there so you can also see this awesome resource run by this young brother, his wife, and Miss Reba. And sometimes they have volunteers to help them out, okay? So we've got to, and I'm saying this over the air, so anyone who's listening, if they were to run up on me, hey Doc, have you got Sean over there yet? You know, okay. See, I believe in public accountability.
You taught
follow-
me in here, right here. Yeah, I'll definitely get over there.
Okay.
I'll definitely take breaks from my employees too. And we can do it.
Okay.
So thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll be back again this week, everybody, at 2:30. So I look forward to seeing everybody again this week.